Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, with you all, today we are going to look at the concept of cell, starting with the introduction. What is a cell? A cell is a fundamental unit of life. So when we say cell is a fundamental unit of life, it means that everything is cell. Everything is cell because that is in terms of life. Because if there is no cell, there is no life. So cell is the building block of life. And I think if you can remember from our last class, we actually discussed briefly on what we call the organization of life. We started with the organization of life, started from, if you could remember, we started from, actually, most of us know that the cell started from cells. Then from cells, we have tissue, and then from tissue, organ, and then from organ, we have system, and then, of course, from system, we have organisms. But ladies and gentlemen, I think for those of you that were able to attend our last class, you were able to see that actually life course, it started from cell. But from before that cells, there are atoms. It started from atoms. So life started from atoms like carbon, nitrogen. So it started from atoms, and then from atoms, molecules, and then from molecules, remember we talk about monomers. So life started from atoms, molecules, then monomers. From monomers, we also talk about macromolecules, and then from we talk about macromolecules, that is macromolecules, and then from macromolecules we also talk about supramolecular complexes, complexes, supramolecular complexes, and then of course from supramolecular complexes, then the organelles of the cells. I think so. Last time we talked about all this. Life started from atoms, then from atoms, molecules, and then from molecules, monomers, macromolecules, then supramolecular complexes, then the organelles of the cell, then the cell itself, the tissue, organ system, and then organisms. So if you didn't actually know about this, if you don't know about this, then you actually watch our previous video. Okay. So now we are going to look at the, as I said, life or cell is the fundamental unit of life. So cell is the block of is actually a building block of life. So if there is no cell, there is no life. So every life depends on cell, and if there is no cell, there is no life. And if there is any problem from a cell, it means that actually there is actually a problem with that particular cell. So as we are seeing now, uh, life is actually depend on cell. So cell is a fundamental unit of life. So if there is no cell, there is no life. So everything depend on cell. So and with that, we are now going to look at how these cells are important, and they are also self-replicating. A cell itself, one cell itself, can be able to replicate itself. It can replicate itself. After it replicates itself, it can produce more of that cell. Like for example, from our basic knowledge of biology, we know about cellular division. We have mitosis and meiosis. So one cell can divide into two, and two cell can divide into four. So actually, one cell can be able to sustain life. With one cell it can sustain life. It means that all the life processes can take place in one single cell. In one single cell. So you should understand that cell is very fundamental in terms of actually controlling the activities of life. So if there is no cell, there is no life. And let me just say this, even in terms of the disease condition, if you see someone is having any kind of disease, it means that the problem is actually coming from that cell. Like for example, you can just say that, okay, someone is having brain problem, is having maybe brain problem, maybe a psychiatric problem, or maybe let's say schizophrenia, or maybe amnesia. That to tells you that the neurocyte, that is the cells from that brain is having problem. Maybe if you are actually to talk about infectious disease, like for example, let's say coronavirus. Coronavirus is also a problem that originated from cell. If you have a problem from actually your lung cells, the problem is actually from lung cells. If the virus is infected your lung cells, actually you will have problem with the disease. So we'll come up with the disease. So that is why we need to understand that. So cells is very, very important. It's fundamental for actually all life processes. And of course, in that cells, we have several organs. We have different organs of the cell, and each of that organs of the cell is responsible for a particular activity. So, for example, in a cell, we have a nucleus. So, if you have a problem with the nucleus of the cell, you have problem with the entire cell, because nucleus is the one that is responsible for controlling all the activities of a cell. So why I'm saying all this is for you to understand that if there is problem with cell, there's a problem with life. And if there is a problem with cells, it means that there will be a disease. There will be a disease. And now the next thing we are going to look how actually this cells is being discovered. This cells is discovered by a scientist, and this scientist is called Robert Hooke in the year 1665. He was able actually to use what we call a compound microscope, and when he used that compound microscope, he was able to observe that those compound or those organelles of the cells. Actually, he was able to actually see those cells very clear, and as a result of that, he was able to actually come up with an idea that he was able to come up with actually how the cells look like. That is, they actually look like a room structure. So he used a compound microscope. So if someone asks you what are the techniques used by this Robert Hooke to come up with an idea of the cell structure, is actually a compound microscope. So he used compound microscope. And when he checked those cells from the slide of Hawk, he saw them something like this. They look like room-like structure. They look like room-like structure. That is how he was able to come up with an idea of the cell. And apart from this Robert Hooke, another scientist called Anthony van Leeuwenhoek. Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, he also used a compound microscope, but with higher magnification, with higher magnification. So you see, first, after Robert Hooke was able to actually come up with the discovery of cell, then the next scientist is Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, who actually used the same types of microscope, which is a compound microscope, but with higher magnification. And he was able to actually observe the more complicated structure, or the more complex structure of cell. And even from that, he was able to even demonstrate that cells can able to move. And that is how he was able to say that, okay, that means that the cells is alive. So it means that Anthony van Leeuwenhoek is the first scientist that was able to actually come up with an idea that a cell is a living object. And by that time around, this Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, with actually a lot of other observation, he was able to come up with an idea that a cell is animal pulse. Animal pulse. Animal pulse. So this Anthony van Leeuwenhoek is a scientist that actually come up with an idea of animal cool structure of a cell, and he is the first scientist that was able to actually show that the cells is alive. So first, Robert Hooke in the year 1665, he used actually a slide of Hawk, and he observed them using a compound microscope, and he was able to come up with an idea of the cell, and he looked actually the structure to look like a room-like structure. And then after that, then Anthony van Leeuwenhoek also used the same types of microscope, but with higher magnification, and he was able to demonstrate that the cells is alive. And then after this Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, also another scientist called Robert Brown in the year 1883. Robert Brown. Robert Brown. Robert Brown. This Robert Brown, in the year 1883, he also at the same time was able to have to demonstrate the more insights, to demonstrate the more actually to highlight the good the inside structure of the cell. It demonstrates more on how the structure of the cells look like, and he is the scientist that was able to actually see the structure of the cell, the structure of the nucleus in the orchid cells. So it means that Robert Brown is a scientist that was able to, or is the first scientist that was able to demonstrate that the nucleus is present in a cell. Robert Brown, in the year 1883, he is a scientist that demonstrates that in a cell there is a nucleus, and at that time actually he used an orchid. He used orchid to demonstrate that. That is, let me just write it here, orchids. That is how he was able to actually demonstrate the structure of the cell. And then after this, then the next thing that we are going to look at, these cells that we are talking about is actually divided into either unicellular organisms or multicellular organisms. So generally, organisms have the organisms can either classified into unicellular organisms or multicellular organisms. When we said multicellular organisms or uni, the word uni means one. It means that they are organisms that have only one cell, that is unicellular organisms. And the multicellular organisms are those organisms that have many cells. They have many cells. Like for example, each and every species of living organisms have their own specific number of cells depending on the age of that particular organisms. Like for example, in average human being, there is over 37.2 trillion cells. Like me, I myself, I am a average human being because I'm not up to 30 and I'm not up to 40. And you should know that actually there are a period where generally humans grow well. Mostly the growth of humans stop at the age of 40. So it means that from any time when you are born up to a 40 years, your level of growth is always increasing. So therefore, as you are going off, the number of cells are increasing. Because why the number of cells are increasing in our body? Why? It's a question. Why? Why cells number increase? Why cells number increase? That is the question. Why do we have increase in cells number? The reason why we have increase in cell number is actually for growth. Because like for example, let's say when you are born, you have only, let's say, 100 cells in your liver. So as you are growing, those number of cells in the liver are increasing, and that is why you are growing from small to big, from big to bigger. It's because the number of cells are increasing, because we have some organs in our body that they are increasing in size due to the increase in number of cells. And of course, we have some organs or some tissues in our body that they grow not based on the number of cells, but due to increase in the size of cell. And those cells that actually have only increase in size of the cells, not actually based on the increase in the number of cells, we have number one, we have heart cells. We have heart, and second, we have brain. So in these cells, in this case, this tissue are only increased in size. So it means that the number of cells you were born with in the liver, in hearts and the brain are the same thing as even as you age, or even as you actually, as you grow. It's based on actually increase in size, not by number. And that is why sometimes if you have problem in your heart or in your brain, it's very difficult to actually cure them. It's very difficult to cure them, because if you have, maybe let's say, necrosis, that is the death of a cell from the heart cells, because it's difficult, it's very, very difficult to regenerate another cells from the heart and the brain. So as a result of that, that is why it's very, very complicated to cure some of the diseases from heart and brain. So ladies and gentlemen, we should understand that in this case, we have unicellular organisms and we have multicellular organisms. So these are a classification of cells. Some organisms have only one cell, while some have many cells. Like we in human, we have so many cells. We have billions of cells. And of course, we have unicellular organisms, like for example, in bacteria. We have even some simple like amoeba, paramecium. We have so many of them. We have, like, apart from amoeba, paramecium, we also have what? Who can tell me? And okay, I omit you. I don't want you to talk now. So we have bacteria, we have amoeba, we have paramecium. They are the examples of unicellular organisms. And then after this, the next thing that you should understand that these cells have different sizes. The cells do not have the same sizes. The cells have different sizes, and the sizes actually range from 2 to 120 micrometer. So the cells have different sizes. Some cells are small, while some cells are big. Like for example, in a human being, the smallest cells that is found in human, the smallest cells that are found in human is sperm cell. That is the smallest cells that is found in human. That is sperm cells. And then after this, and then the biggest cells that is found in human is the egg cells of women. Egg cells of women, and then sperm cell in men. So these are the smallest cells that is found in the sperm cell, and this is actually, sorry, that is the smallest cells that is found in human, and the biggest cells that are found in women. So actually the cells also do not have the same sizes, they have various sizes, they have different sizes, okay? Okay, so now the next thing that we are going to look at is actually some structure of the cell. So in a cell, we have some basic structure, and that is when you are actually going to draw the structure of the cell. That is why sometimes it is very, very important to look at how they clearly look like. Like for example, look at how the nucleus look like, and we have endoplasmic reticulum, we have cytoplasm, and of course in the nucleus we have DNA, and then we also have lysosome, we have ribosomes, mitochondria, Golgi apparatus, cytoplasm, and then all this, they are here. And as we are going to, actually, as we are moving in this course, we are going to look at clearly the functions of these organelles, how they are functions and how they are important in sustaining the activities of a cell. So we are going to look at them one after the other, okay? But I'm not going to, okay, but I can actually say it briefly here. What is the functions of the cell membrane? The function of the cell membrane, number one, is actually to protect the cell. It protects the cell. It gives protection to the cell, because it's not everything that will be allowed to get into the cell. It's not everything that will be allowed to get into the cell. So it gives protection to the cell. It gives protection to the cell. And also at the same time, it controls what will get into the cell and control what will get out of the cell. And then second is the nucleus, and the nucleus is where all the activities of the cells are controlled. And why is it that it is the control center of the cell? Is because of the presence of this DNA. Because DNA is actually the language of life. You are the way you are because of your DNA. You are beautiful because of your DNA. You are ugly because of your DNA. You are intelligent because of your DNA. And you are short because of your DNA. You are smart because of your DNA. And you are not smart, you are dull because of your DNA. And everything that you know in life is controlled by this DNA. So as we are moving, we're also going to shout a lot on DNA. And of course, we have lysosome. And what is the importance of lysosome? What is the importance of lysosome? What is the importance of this lysosome? Okay, so DNA is very, very important. And then the next thing is lysosome. So generally virus and other infectious organisms, they get into our cells and we don't need them because they cause disease in our body. So this lysosome, in this this lysosome contains what you call lysozyme. Lysozyme. And what these lysozymes did, they are enzymes. What they do actually when there is any foreign organisms like virus, bacteria, fungi, they'll just eliminate them. They will eliminate them, they will neutralize them and get rid them out of the cell. So that is what they do. And then like the next thing is the ribosome. And what is the importance of ribosome in a cell? The importance of the ribosomes in a cell is actually a protein manufacturing industry. Ribosome, ribosome is the protein manufacturing industry. Protein manufacturing industry. So this is where we produce proteins in our body, like maybe antibodies. Like generally, of course, if there is any foreign organisms that actually want to cause any harm or problem in your body, you need to produce like antibodies for you to get rid of them. So these proteins are actually produced in the ribosomes. And another thing, we know that in the red blood cells we have hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein. So where is this protein is synthesized? Actually, is synthesized in the ribosome. So that is the importance of ribosomes. Ribosomes is protein manufacturing industry, is where the proteins is being synthesized in a cell. So then the next thing is mitochondria. Mitochondria is actually energy generating industry. Is the energy generating industry. That is the industry where energy that we utilize, or not all, but 90% of the energy that we use are synthesized from the mitochondria. Of course, we have two components of the cell where energy are being synthesized. So ladies and gentlemen, now I'm telling you one that's in the mitochondria. Mitochondria produce energy, and this energy is in the form of ATP. When you said ATP, it means adenosine triphosphate. So energy is synthesized in the mitochondria. And then where is the second place where we synthesize energy in the cell is actually cytoplasm. Cytoplasm, we synthesize energy. And that is why, if you will remember from your basic knowledge of biology from secondary school, remember one concept called glycolysis. Glycolysis, where glycolysis takes place. Glycolysis is taking place in the cytoplasm. And in this glycolysis, we generate ATP. ATP is also generated in glycolysis. And of course, in the mitochondria, we have what you call, if you remember, there is what you call TCA cycle. TCA cycle. But in addition, there is also what you call oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation. Phosphorylation. So ladies and gentlemen, please get this. How many ways do we get ATP in the body? How many ways? How many ways do we get ATP in the body? There are three. There are three. One, that is what you call oxidative phosphorylation. That is what you call oxidative phosphorylation. And the second one is substrate level phosphorylation. The second one is called substrate level phosphorylation. So the oxidative phosphorylation is taking place in the mitochondria, while the substrate level phosphorylation is taking place mostly in cytoplasm. But now, one, which organelles of the cells do you synthesize ATP? We synthesize ATP in the mitochondria and in the cytoplasm, but most of the energy are synthesized in the mitochondria. And what are the two ways do we generate ATP in the body? We have two ways. Number one, we have oxidative phosphorylation, which is also mostly taking place in the mitochondria. And then second, we have substrate level phosphorylation. So these are the two processes where we generate ATP in the body. Okay, and then the next thing after the mitochondria is Golgi body. What is the importance of Golgi body in the body? The importance of Golgi body is actually, it's like once the protein is being synthesized, when protein is synthesized from the ribosome, so that protein needs to be processed and packaged. So the processing and the packaging, remember, it's like you want to produce bread. You want to produce bread in an industry. So after you produce the bread, once you produce the bread, you are not going to start selling it just like that. One, you have to process it and then you package it. So when protein is being synthesized in the ribosome, then the Golgi body will process that proteins and package it. So that is what the Golgi apparatus is doing in a cell. And then the next thing is actually cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is actually a part of the cells where all the organelles of the cells is a fluid environment. It's a what? Fluid environment. It's a fluid environment. It's a fluid environment. It's a fluid environment where all the organelles of the cells are being suspended. Look at it. If you look at the structure, look at how it is. All this part of the cells is actually, look at it. All this is the cytoplasm. So if you look at in this cytoplasm, these are the organelles. So you see that they are suspended. They are suspended in the cytoplasm. So it means that the cytoplasm is a fluid structure. It's a fluid structure where all the organelles of the cells are being suspended. And apart from the organelles, also some macromolecules are also present, because in the cytoplasm you can get carbohydrates. You can also get proteins. You can get lipids. So all these things, you can get them in the cytoplasm. So it means that cytoplasm is the organelles of the cells where, is a fluid-like environment, or is a fluid environment where all organelles of the cells are suspended, and it also contains some macromolecules, and these macromolecules include carbohydrate, proteins, and lipids. Okay, so that is that. So this is just brief introduction of these organelles of the cells, but in this course we are going to look at them in more detail. In details we are going to look at that, because each and every one of them, like this cell membrane, it may even take us not less than maybe 10 or 5 different lectures for you to cover it, because we are going to talk a lot of it. So that is why I will advise you, ladies and gentlemen, if it is possible, try to get those materials for Biol 114, and then you combine it together with these lectures. Okay, and then now the next thing that we are going to look at is actually cellular theory. So this cellular theory is actually very fundamental. It's very fundamental, but you should understand that this cellular theory is proposed by 3 major scientists. And these major scientists, we have Matthias Kleiding, Theodor Schwann, and Robert Birkhoff. These are the scientists that actually come up with the idea of cellular theory. And this cellular theory was proposed in the year 1839. So we need to understand them. So number one, all living things are made up of cells. So it means that each and every living organism that you know on earth is made up of cells, because the cell is fundamental for life and is a building block of life. So if there is no cells, it means that there is no life. So if you see that there is any problem in a cells, then there is a problem with life. So living organisms or living things are made of cell. And second, cells are the smallest working unit of all living things. They are the working unit. When we said they are working unit, it's like in the university. In the university, what make university functional? What make university function is department. If there is no department, there will be no faculty. And if there is no faculty, then there is no university. So therefore, the faculty or the working unit or the working unit of living organisms is a cell. It's a cell. It's like if there is no department, so there is no university. And if there is no cell, so there is no life. You should get this. And all cells come from free existing cells through cell division. Yeah, of course. You can't just say that you just see a new cell. No, it's not possible. It's not possible. All living cells come from the free existing cell. Like for example, how did we now arrive at this? Ladies and gentlemen, please get this concept very well. How do we now come to this stage that we are now? How do we come to this stage that we are now? We come to this stage through the cellular division. Like for example, where life starts from, it started of course from one sperm cell. So sperm cell plus egg cell will give you what we call zygote. Sperm cell and egg cell will give us what we call zygotes. So when you have sperm cell and egg cell, it will give us what we call zygote. So sperm cell and egg cell will give us a zygote, and a zygote is a single cell. It's a single cell on its own. And this single cell, which is the zygote, will divide itself. So one zygote cell will divide into two zygote cells. And from the two zygote cell is divided, will divide into 4. And from 4 will now go into 8. And from 8, 16. So when it comes to the level of 16, it's now changed from zygote. It will change itself through some physiological process to what you call morula. And then from this morula, then it will continue dividing. Then from there, the cell will start specializing, differentiating, and then of course we'll have embryo. We have embryo, and then the embryo will further divide. Then you have fetus, and then the fetus will now, we give birth to the fetus, then grow, then it will now become the complete human being, become a complete human being. So ladies and gentlemen, this is how the journey of life started. So it started from a single cell. So you can't have just a new cell on its own, unless if it comes from one cell. So it means that the life is coming from a particular progenitor cells. Okay. So this is actually some basic cellular theory that all living organisms are made up of cells, and cells are the smallest working unit of all living things. And all cells come from free existing cells through cellular division. And then, so now the next things, we are now going to look at the next slides. Okay. So now the constituents. What are the constituents of cell? So different substances that make a cell are collectively called protoplasm. So the different substances, different substances, no matter what they are, provided that they are the substances that are found in the cells, they are collectively called protoplasm. And this protoplasm is made up of some components. And what are those substances? What are those different substances that are found in a cell? First, there is a water. So it means that water occupied a percentage of about 70 to 80%. So 70 to 80% of a cell, 70 to 80% of a cell is water. And then apart from water, there is carbohydrates. lipids, proteins, and electrolytes. And electrolytes can be anion or cations. We have sodium cations, potassium, magnesium, and calcium cations. We have phosphate, chloride, and bicarbonates. They are all anions. So these are the 5 major components of protoplasm. So it means that in cells there are different components, and these different components include water, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and then electrolytes. And these are the different types of the electrolyte, and they have their different functions. As we are continue with these classes, we are going to understand what is the role and importance of each of these components that are found in a cell. So now the next things that we are going to look at is actually subcellular structure of a cell. Subcellular structure of a cell. What are these subcellular structure of the cell? So the major structures present in a cell, these are the 3 major structures found in a cell. 1, cell membrane, and second, cytoplasm and organelles, and then lastly is nucleus. So these are the major structures that are found in a cell. So we are going to start discussing on the cell membrane. We will see its function and what it does. Okay. Okay, so now starting with cell membrane. There is a thin, pliable, elastic outermost structures which envelopes the cell. So it means that the cell membrane is actually the outer part of the cell that envelop or that cover the entire cell. What does that mean? If you have a cell, you have a membrane, and this membrane is look like this. And in this membrane, it consists of lipid bilayer with embedded proteins that are called integral proteins and peripheral proteins. So it means that in this cell membrane, there are different components that are found in this cell membrane. And these different components, when we said bilayer, what does that mean as a bilayer? You see, if you now check this from here to here is one layer. And from here to here is another layer. But one layer is outside, that is at the extracellular fluid. Look at it, extracellular fluid. And the second one is in the cytoplasm. So that is why lipid is considered as a bilayer. Please, ladies and gentlemen, get this point. The lipid is a bilayer. And we are also going to look at who are the scientists that was able to discover and come up with a fluid mosaic model and the lipid bilayer nature of the cell membrane. But now we are starting with one. You should understand that the lipids is a lipid bilayer. When you say lipid bilayer, it means that it is made up of 2 layers, one at the extracellular fluid and one in the cytoplasm. And in this lipid bilayer, there are different lipids, there are different components, and they have different functions. And this lipid comprises of protein channel. There are some protein channel like transport proteins, and there are carbohydrates, there are hydrophilic heads, and there are hydrophobic head. Because what I want you to understand, we are talking about a lipid bilayer. So the lipid, you have to understand the lipid itself. And what is the lipid? When we said lipids, lipid is made up of different components. And what are those components of this lipids? 1, we have what you call hydrophobic lipid, and most of the lipid is actually hydrophobic. When you said hydrophobic, it means that it's a lipid that doesn't interact with water. It's a lipid that doesn't interact with water. And there is also what you call amphipathic lipid. Amphipathic lipid. When you said amphipathic lipid, it means that there are those lipids that have both hydrophobic component and hydrophilic. What is hydrophilic? It means that hydrophilic is a component of lipid that interact with water, while hydrophobic is the lipid that doesn't interact with water. So there are some lipids that have both hydrophilic component and hydrophobic component. So like for example, now check this from this lipid bilayer. You see, you have a lipid here, but this is what hydrophilic heads. It means that this is the head of the lipids that can interact with water. Look at it. If you have a lipid, it's sometimes, let me just show you another how you can also write this structure of or this lipid bilayer. You can do it like this. It's something like this. At the ends, you will have something like tail here. You will have something like tail, something like tail, something like tail, something like tail. So this cycle as you are seeing here is the hydrophilic. That is the hydrophilic head here that interact with water. And those tails that you are seeing here, like here, if you look at it very clear, you can see. Look at it here. So all these tails that you are seeing, all this, they are hydrophobic components. That is dot component that cannot interact with water. These are the tails that are here. Look at them. They are the tails that are here that they don't interact with water. But those cycles that are outside here, these small balls that you are seeing here, like here, it means that they are the hydrophilic head. So it means that they interact with water. And also this one, they interact with water. So it means that all